OMG. After 8 years of chaos, betrayal, and 4 kids, I finally realized. Love or trauma bond. Face screaming in fear, this relationship is a wild ride. I encountered my now ex-boyfriend, let's refer to him as Tom, as a marijuana supplier through a roommate, and it turned out we attended the same school and somewhat knew the same circles of people. Since I was a year older than him, we did not actually meet during high school, but he was aware of me through mutual friends, as I have several siblings who all went to the same school and formed friendships within his group. During high school, I required rehabilitation, which marked the beginning of my long struggle with addiction. Fast forward to our late 20s. I have one child with a different individual who is 38 years old, and I was fighting for custody while grappling with active opiate dependence after undergoing hand surgery and being prescribed pain medication. I continued to contend with opiate addiction, fighting for custody, when I experienced sexual assault from someone I was interested in, we'll call him Mike. I did not report it, but approximately a week later, I started casually seeing my 37-year-old boyfriend, Tom. However, after about 3 months, I began feeling extremely unwell. Surprise, I was pregnant. I informed both men but did not disclose to either that there might be a second possible father. When I visited the doctor for my due date, I mentioned needing to establish the conception timeline due to the potential of 2 fathers. She confirmed it aligned with the time I spent with Tom. Consequently, we embarked on a committed relationship, and he traveled abroad to visit family for a month. The term, love, was loosely exchanged once we became devoted to one another. Upon his return, we moved in together and both expressed interest in a paternity test once our baby was born. I believed the tests were essential to eliminate any lingering doubts or possibilities. The results indicated the child was not his, which left him furious, and he sought details, understandably. I explained that I had been sexually assaulted at a gathering. I hesitated to mention the one-night stand because it was embarrassing to me. Following that, he went out of town with his best friend and a woman who had pressed aggravated assault charges against me and attempted to have me imprisoned. His friend later reported that they spent the entire time in the room engaging in sexual activities. Naturally, I was upset, as anyone would be, since we were still trying to make our relationship work. This ultimately led to our separation, and we spent a few years apart during which I began a relationship with Mike. The terrible actions he perpetrated against me were appalling. 6 months later, I left him and filed charges, successfully having him incarcerated. All the while, my custody proceedings continued. At this juncture, I consented to relinquish my primary custody to terminate the custody battle, which was also challenging in itself. Concealing my addiction took its toll, but eventually, I did what was necessary and achieved sobriety. At this time, I reconciled with Tom in an all-or-nothing relationship as he had communicated throughout our time apart that we would eventually get married. "I'm going to marry you, just wait and see." We got back together and initially things were going well. We were both working and attending to household needs. I started bartending at the local bar, which was one of 3 nearby, leading to constant busyness. I earned good money but swiftly fell into drinking. For a period, all seemed fine, but I eventually lost control over my substance use and began partying excessively. It wasn't that I was out engaging in numerous sexual encounters, but I did form a temporary, best friend relationship with the bar owner's girlfriend, let's call her Lacey. The bar owner, an alcoholic, whom we will name Bob, allowed me to drink for free, and we often remained at the bar after closing, drinking until dawn. There was even one occasion where I returned home at 7 a.m. after searching for a thief within the establishment, which we all celebrated once the culprit was apprehended. I stayed overnight with Lacey multiple times after she had a drunk driving accident. Throughout all this, Tom remained supportive. When I became pregnant again, I stopped drinking and once again managed to get my life back on track. I continued working at the bar during this period. Tom and I frequently argued about my role at the bar, as he believed I was being unfaithful. I did engage in emotional infidelity. I went on a few dates during our fights, but did not actually sleep with anyone. Tom also engaged in both emotional and physical infidelity. I uncovered evidence of his actions by recovering deleted messages from his phone, but he continually denied it. Although he was still a marijuana supplier, I occasionally assisted some customers in the past. There was one incident that particularly bothered him. I had advanced credit to someone who came to the house to repay me. Tom returned home earlier than expected, which understandably upset him. This individual eventually began messaging me on Facebook, as he did not have my phone number, and Tom discovered it, leading him to believe I was cheating. I could only acknowledge that it understandably disturbed him. This man subsequently required police intervention due to his obsessive behavior and threats toward others. Tom was convinced that I had a relationship with this individual and that I had been unfaithful. At this stage in our relationship, Tom was no longer taking me out on dates and persistently criticized my contributions around the house, claiming I was not fulfilling my marital obligations and was not sufficiently joyful. I ended up pregnant again, making it 4 children in total. We confirmed that the third child was indeed Tom's. Initially, he doubted paternity and did not develop a bond with the baby until the test results were provided. Even after that, he suspected that I could have tampered with the results. I continued to inquire about how I could improve our relationship and what I could do to foster his happiness, feeling that we were drifting apart. During this time, I began to spiral, believing I could do nothing right. Our relationship would improve for a couple of weeks only to revert to arguments. We had to move twice, and he was resistant due to rising rent costs. Eventually, he convinced me to persuade my mother to sell her house and move in with us. He also started leaving for work at 6:30 or 7:00 a.m. and returning at 9:00 or 10:00 p.m., claiming it was necessary due to increased expenses. I was not contributing financially and was not employed, which added strain to our financial situation. I enrolled in school to earn a better job in hopes of increasing his availability. He grew angry and claimed he had not wanted to reconcile for 2 years. I am uncertain if he meant it, but those were his words. I have been making every effort to address his complaints, but my mental health has declined, leading to episodes of anger. He told me he could not take me out on dates because my contribution to the finances had increased, while I expressed repeatedly that I could not continue like this and wanted to escape the misery. I went through his phone again to recover deleted data and discovered he had been communicating with several women. He insisted he had never slept with them, but acknowledged he had spoken to them and sent an old video of himself engaging in a sexual act to a woman who supposedly does not reside nearby. My mother eventually told him to leave, which left me responsible for all bills. I had purchased a new Tesla to work as a food delivery driver. One day, while he was using the Tesla to run an errand, my mother and I were preoccupied on my phone, so when he requested to use it, I told him just to take the keys. He interpreted that as me acting suspiciously and concealing something. This led to an argument, during which he brought up everything he believed I had done behind his back in the past, adamantly asserting that he had never cheated. Upon reflection, I see red flags on both sides. I found a side job through a family friend, a 37-year-old man I'll refer to as Leo, which my mother helped set up for me. This was one of the individuals Tom suspected I was involved with. I managed to persuade Leo to assist in cleaning a house for payment, and surprisingly, Tom showed up just as Leo arrived to check on a paint job he had completed. I had not communicated with Leo prior. I had been completely overwhelmed trying to find extra work to support our bills. Tom was still providing some financial assistance, but he felt humiliated and embarrassed because he believed I should not converse with any other men. During this time, while he was partially present in the relationship, I expressed my desire for a sugar daddy. About a year ago, I went out for an hour once, which I disliked, but I was honest with Tom because I felt I was financially drowning. Tom eventually managed our finances, and we moved into another house, which has a pool. The rental price remained comparable, yet it was still costly. I suggested we seek counseling to help us realign, and while he initially agreed, he then refused to explain why he allowed me to spiral into self-doubt and insecurity. We must co-parent, and my heart aches. I desperately want to resolve our issues, but I recognize that it requires effort from both sides. I have completely fallen apart and am overwhelmed with depression and anger. I feel entirely rejected. Throughout this entire process, I have been striving to change and improve my flaws to become a suitable partner for him. Communicating with him now presents a challenge. I have had to begin counseling due to my deep-seated depression, feeling submerged by those troubling thoughts. How can I effectively communicate with him? How can I parent while my heart is shattered? I find myself in tears constantly, and his sole offer has been to take care of the children while I attempt to heal. When my grandmother passed away, he claimed my distress was the reason he cheated on me, despite earlier stating he had never cheated. I have been desperate to mend our relationship. Now, it is imperative that I focus on my healing. The prospect of losing this relationship and enduring another custody battle terrifies me and threatens to consume me. Our son is autistic and arrives home from school at 3 p.m. I have secured some work from home opportunities, but they offer minimal pay and require complete silence. I cannot afford daycare since my income is barely sufficient, and I must be available to care for the children. Tom believes he should no longer contribute to household expenses. We have continued to be intimate because I do not want him to be with anyone else. He has come over, spent the night, helped with light cleaning, and watched the children when I needed a break during our child's illness. He always ensured that bills were settled when we lived together, but he rarely performed household tasks like hanging Christmas lights, maintaining the pool pump, or cleaning the garage. I need help understanding where our relationship deteriorated. What responsibilities should each partner assume for the household when one is working and the other is looking after the children? He also mentioned that meal preparation was an issue, being dissatisfied unless I invested significant time into it. Hamburger helper, not acceptable. Frozen dinners, also not acceptable. Is there even a point in trying to prepare meals at this stage? Story 2. OMG, after 18 years of strained sisterhood, I finally snapped. I'm done feeling guilty for choosing my own dreams over her drama. I am a 31-year-old female who has a highly complex relationship with my older sister, who is 41 years old. To provide some background, we share the same mother but have different fathers. Her father is financially well off, while mine is absent, which might explain the different ways we were raised. Essentially, I was raised as an only child since she and my older brother, who is 44, lived with their father and moved out when I was still young. She has always been a daddy's girl, while I have been a mother's girl. I care for my sister, but her treatment of me throughout our lives is taking a significant toll on my mental well-being and makes me question her concern for me. Given that she is 10 years my senior, she often believes she is correct about everything, and when I want to express my opinion, she belittles me and makes me feel insignificant because I am her younger sister and she believes she knows more. She tends to focus on all the negative happenings in the world and tries to induce guilt in others for being content amidst suffering. Moreover, she does not take any personal responsibility to contribute positively. Although she sees herself as upbeat, her behavior tends to create anxiety among those around her. Whenever we argue, I feel as if I am losing my sanity, and I've come to understand that she gaslights me whenever we disagree. She always plays the victim role when I attempt to explain that her manner of speaking hurts my feelings, and she turns me into the antagonist because she has pushed me to a breaking point where I can only react with anger. She attributes my frustration to my astrological sign and implies I should simply move on, but I have come to realize that ignoring unresolved issues does not bring me peace. This dynamic began when I first recognized that my sister and I are fundamentally different individuals. I wish I could elaborate further, but to summarize the summer I turned 18 and she was 28, we relocated to a new state and lived together. This was my first experience moving out of my childhood home, and the new environment was overwhelming. My sister became controlling, leading me to feel that I could not truly be myself while around her. I was utterly unhappy and felt I never wanted to see her again. This period was incredibly traumatic for me, and I promised myself that I would never cohabitate with her again. While growing up, I had seen her as my closest friend, but that summer altered my perception of her. I have discussed how that period impacted me, and while she has improved somewhat when we maintain distance, we still clash once we spend a few days together because I refuse to let her control me anymore. In 2024, she decided to append her entire life to relocate to another country for a man she had met the previous year. They had been in a long-distance relationship, and she planned to stay there for an extended period. I genuinely wished her well and was thrilled that she was pursuing her desires. Unfortunately, her long-term plans fell through, and she had to return unexpectedly. While she was away, we communicated frequently through video calls, and I felt like our relationship was strengthening. I missed her a great deal and was delighted when she returned to town. This transition was particularly devastating for her because she had envisioned an entirely new life and now felt she was reverting to a situation she had aimed to escape. She was gone for around 8 months and came back just before Thanksgiving 2024. It's essential to remember that she was heartbroken and facing an uncertain future. Our conflict occurred at the beginning of December 2024. I wanted to reach out to her to catch up after what had been an extremely stressful week, hoping to vent about work. I believed our relationship had improved enough that I could approach her, but she later claimed I merely called to unload my issues onto her. My job requires hot water, and we had been without it for the entire month. I was explaining how I love renting, because owning a home often brings additional stress when appliances need replacing. Instead of engaging with my concerns, she abruptly shifted the conversation to discussing plans for us to purchase a house with our mother, who is 64 years old. She expressed that returning home made her realize how elderly our mother had become. I politely stated that I prefer living alone and have worked hard to secure my own apartment without having roommates. She accused me of being selfish for wanting to live independently when I could be supporting our mother, given her age and potential health issues. I found this assertion to be overly dramatic and unexpected. I explained that I simply had different plans for when my lease ends and certainly did not wish to live with my sister again, reminding her of our previous negative experience together when I was 18. She told me to mature because that was in the past and implied I should feel guilty for not wanting to live with our mother while she is still alive. This only added to my stress, especially since I had initially called her to share my frustrations. I began to experience a panic attack from the accumulated pressures, which my sister seemed to exacerbate by introducing guilt over our mother's situation. While my sister has been living abroad, I have stayed close to our mother and spent quality time with her. My sister, on the other hand, neglected to keep in touch while she was away. Now that my sister is back, she suddenly wants to reconnect with our mother, but makes me feel guilty for pursuing my own plans. I understand that our mother is not going to be around forever, and I even reached out to my mother crying because she is the only one who understands how my sister has treated me. My mother reassured me that she prefers to see me happy and living independently rather than cohabitating with my sister. I have a secure relationship with my mother, and she knows me better than anyone else. My sister believes she is the sole person concerned about our mother's health, which I find delusional, especially since I am the one spending time with her while my sister chooses to focus on her life. Additionally, since January, my sister has been residing in a different state with her father and has continued to neglect visiting our mother since returning. I expressed to my sister that I was offended by her implication that I am a bad daughter when I believe I provide more support to our mother than she does. I felt that my aspirations and desires were being overshadowed by her agenda. I have opted to ignore her for the past 2 months. Every time we have a confrontation, my sister fails to take responsibility, leading to unresolved issues, and then wonders why I explode with frustration when she persists in her behavior. We typically avoid each other until she attempts to ease back into my life as if nothing happened, which only infuriates me further. She began sending me humorous videos on Instagram and acting as if I were no longer upset with her. I then sent her a message requesting an apology, to which she replied, "I already apologized, but I am still waiting for mine." I answered, saying I am sorry I triggered your insecurities does not qualify as a genuine apology, and she continued to argue that I had attacked her dreams of creating a safe space for our mother and younger sister. I asked, "What about my aspirations? Why are they deemed less important?" Of course, everything I articulate seems to go unnoticed. I am exhausted from this ongoing competition regarding who cares for our mother more while she persists in being absent. I am fed up with feeling this level of anger each time I communicate with her. I envision a different reality for our sisterly relationship, but it remains an unattainable ideal, and she never seems to change. I now realize that I am wasting my energy trying to make her comprehend my feelings. I have attempted to set boundaries, but I believe it is time for me to step away. Would I be considered the antagonist if I completely sever ties with my sister?